Mhm.
Few more seconds. All right, Mayor, ready to go.
Thank you, Bonnie. I hereby call the Des Moines City Council study session for Thursday, April 7th to order. And with that, I'm going to have Councilmember Nutting lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Councilmember Nutting. Let the roll reflect that all 7 members of council are present. And a quick note before we get into correspondence is I'd like to say happy birthday to Councilmember Pennington.
Yeah,
So everybody say happy birthday to him.
happy birthday.
Happy birthday, Vic.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
I'm
Thank you.
sure,
Happy birthday, Vic.
I'm sure there's nothing you'd rather be doing than being at a council meeting on your birthday. So we appreciate you being here. All right. Are there any correspondence?
Thank you, Mayor. We do not have any correspondence, but we do have the following who have provided written public comment. Mike Halco, Marina Finances. Rod Hansen, March 10th meeting, Marina Enterprise Fund. Jackie Hopkins, Animal Control Officer. Sabrina Souffrant, The Landmark. Jill Wright, Animal Control. Adina Cherry, Save the Masonic Home. Shannon Johnson, Animal Control. Pat Corbin Chow. Are the city and city taxpayers responsible for dollars damages for lack of animal control resulting in property damage and or worse personal injury or death? And Mayor Amanda Barron is in the meeting, ready to give public comment.
Thank you, Bonnie. So before we take up comments for the public, I would just like to remind those participants that any person making personal, impertinent, or slanderous remarks or become boisterous, threatening, or personally abusive while addressing the council will be removed from the meeting. When it's your time to speak, you may turn your camera on, and if you have one, and after you've concluded, please turn your camera off. And with that, Amanda, are you here? I see her. And if you have a camera, Amanda, you can turn that on as well. I see her connecting to audio.
Mayor, while she does that, we did have one who signed up to speak, but he's not on yet. That was Gary Malcolm, and his subject was urgent need for the Des Moines Animal Services are in the meeting, or excuse me, and that's what him. So if he comes on, I'll let you know, but I haven't seen him come on to the meeting.
Okay. Bear with us, folks. She's connecting. Councilmember Harris, is there any chance I could get you to mute your mic? It's coming through on the feed.
My apologies.
Thank you, sir. Amanda, you're there?
Hi, I'm here.
Okay. You have 3 minutes to speak. Go ahead.
Awesome. So since this is the public health and safety meeting, I wanted to.
I'm sorry, Amanda, correction. This is the city council meeting itself.
Okay, I guess.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Even better.
Go ahead.
Got you all. I wanted to get some transparency on what's happening with animal control services in the city. From my understanding, there was someone in that position who is no longer. I don't see any advertised job posting for the position. And I am someone that works with Burien Cares very closely in a volunteer capacity. However, I live in Des Moines, and this is a problem that's only going to get worse the longer we wait. So if someone could enlighten me as far as what's going on there, that would be great.
Is that the conclusion of your remarks?
I guess I don't have any basis as far as what's going on, so I don't want to come in too hot, but I do want to stress the importance of this. I volunteer probably close to 20 hours of my own time a week trapping stray cats in the city limits. And I know there's other members of the community that handles dogs, and the amount of time that we are spending on this is extensive. And there's no reason for it other than the fact that we care. But these are services that were once provided to the city and should be continuously provided because it is a public safety concern. And to think that Burien Cares is going to be able to handle a loose dog in Redondo in a timely fashion is not logical at all. That's a 25-minute commute on a good day. So springtime is coming. This is when the animals are getting loose, and no matter how hard we try to contain our pets in our homes and what have you, things happen, and we need a way to deal with this, and we need to deal with it sooner rather than later for the sake of these animals and the entire community.
Okay. Yeah, typically the public comments where you make your concerns aware to us. Not necessarily do we respond to them right away. I will tell you this, stay on the meeting, and I think you'll hear some answers in the direction we're headed.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your time. All right. So now I'm going to turn it over to the city manager for a brief update.
Thank you, Mayor. Timely. What I'm going to ask is for Chief Thomas to give us an update on animal control, where we are. This is a transitional time, and the chief can highlight that. But I want to remind everyone, I don't know, I watch the news every night at 11, and all I see are shootings in cities. Hopefully not often in ours, but often enough. So the ability of our police to respond to situations we want them to respond to is always a function of the priority of what they need to respond to that may be life-threatening. So, Chief, would you just give us a brief update on animal control, where we are and where we're headed?
Yes, thank you, and good evening, City Council and City Administrator. I want to be clear, we do have animal control. We don't currently have an animal control officer. That officer recently resigned, but I can tell you that our officers do respond to animal control complaints. We do have one person on our staff, happens to be our code enforcement officer, that is trained in animal control and has actually gone to the Animal Control Academy and successfully completed that. So I just want to reaffirm that we will and do respond to animal control calls. As the city manager said, we're currently in transition for what is best for the city as far as animal control services go. For the police department, our top priority is to keep our community safe and focus on the safety of our community. I will also say that the animal control position is currently part of discussions between the city and the police guild as part of ongoing labor negotiations. And I want to highlight that even when we do have an dedicated animal control officer, they work 40 hours a week for all other hours besides the 40 hours that they're working, our officers respond to animal control calls for service and always have. There was a transition between our long-term animal control officer of 30 years. We went almost a year without an animal control officer, and our existing staff handled those calls for service. Then we had another officer, and now we're in that transition again to where decisions need to be made on moving forward. And that includes what's best for taxpayers as far as if we can get the same or better service at a much less price to our taxpayers. So there's a lot being discussed. And once again, I think that the key word is transition, and the fact that we do have our officers responding to those calls when needed.
Thank you, Chief. Mayor, I don't know if there are any questions among the council or not.
Councilmember Harris.
Thank you, Mayor. Chief, and I don't want to put you on the spot. Do you have a, just a general approximation of how many dollars the pet licensing fees bring in? Or could the council get that?
I think the council could get that. I don't have it off the top of my head.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry. I know you got other stuff. I was just wondering. That's it, man. Thanks.
Thank you, Chief. Ms. Barron, could you please turn off your camera? Thank you. Okay.
Thank you, Mayor.
So with that, the city manager and I have, we obviously received a number of proposals and goals from the council. Some of them related to policies and some of them related to administration of the city. At this time, we're going to take a moment to view the roles of council and the roles of the city manager to ensure that we keep this meeting on track and we focus on our discussion on policy, which is our role as city council. So the first slide. Des Moines is a code city with a council manager form of government. Roles and responsibilities are defined by the laws of the state of Washington. These roles and responsibilities cannot be changed by the city council. Next slide, please. The city council may exercise authority as a collective body. A majority vote can accomplish council-related actions, motions, resolutions, ordinances, etc. Individual council members acting outside of a meeting have no individual authority to oversee the administration. They have no oversight duties, and none are cited in the statutes. Next slide, please. The council manager form of government consists of an elected city council, which is responsible for the policy making, and professional city manager appointed by the council who is responsible for that administration. Next slide, please. By state law, the city council is prohibited from interfering with the manager's administration. The city manager, however, is directly accountable to the collective will of the council and can be removed by a majority vote of the council. The council manager form is based on the model of a business with a board of directors that appoints a chief executive officer. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to City Manager Matthias for some additional information.
Thank you, Mayor. Next slide. So here's a breakdown of some of the specific responsibilities of the city manager and of the council. Legislative authority rests with the council. As the mayor stated, passage of ordinances, resolutions, motions, proclamations, and other legislative actions are the prerogative of the council as and when the council is meeting as a body. In order the executive authority to run the government, that is a city manager appointed by the council, who both have the right to appoint and or remove the CEO, who is the city manager. The appointment of department heads is the role of the city manager. There is no council confirmation. I think it's I think a sort of a sign that we're in sync. We just named several new department heads, and I was very appreciative of council's response to that, and congratulations to those people, all of whom were internal promotions. But that responsibility to appoint or remove department heads falls to the city manager. Policy development, city manager recommends an annual budget and can recommend policy issues. But for the city to adopt a policy is the responsibility of the city council meeting as a council. Policy implementation of whatever policy council determines is the responsibility of the manager. And some of the underlying principles of that is in a council manager form of government, there's a separation of politics from administrative action. It promotes economy and efficiency through professional management. There's a strong central executive, and it follows a business model, which we tend to follow very closely in Des Moines. Next slide, please. State law mandates city manager duties. City manager is chief executive officer, has general supervision over the administrative affairs of the city, appoints and removes all department heads, and for that, we do not need council approval for either appointing or removing. Attends all meetings with city council, which attendance is required by the council. Sees that all laws and ordinances are faithfully executed, and the council, at least those of you who've been here for a while, are aware of different investigations and actions we've had to take in consistency with state law, with the auditor's office and in other jurisdictions where things we need to do, and we have to follow what our responsibilities are. And also the city manager can recommend for adoption by the council such measures as he or she deems necessary or expedient. So part of what you will receive in your agenda items is a recommendation from staff as to what we would recommend the council to do, fully acknowledging it's the council's ultimate decision to take whatever position they want. And I believe, is that it? Yes. Great. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Michael. So the purpose of this meeting is for council members to convey their views of strategy and goal setting to our city staff. I had previously asked all council members to submit their top items for the purpose of starting with the most common topics and working our way down on priorities as time allows. The goal is to consolidate thoughts for direction as a council and not individuals. Each council member will have an opportunity to share their vision and specifics on each topic. To create an efficient and effective meeting, I ask all council members to provide their thoughts in a concise and timely manner. So basically each round, I'm going to give you about between 3 to 5 minutes per topic, and we'll do it for 2 rounds. As we have in, what I would also do is encourage staff to provide input during those discussions. And at the end of each subject, we will have the following actions. 1, we will have the staff take it away to research and provide answers at a later date. We will remand it to a committee for a work plan. It'll be moved to a future discussion. In some cases, it might be a study session for council rules, or in some cases, if it's not relevant or we don't feel as a majority, it'll be dismissed. I remind council when considering actions on topics of discussions, they acknowledge the capacity of our staff and our budget limitations. I will be using the attachment to the packet in the order it was published with one change. We will start with the Marina as we have consultants here for that first part, and I want to be considerate of their time. During this conversation, I expect this meeting to go for a considerable length of time, approximately 7-ish. We'll probably take a break in that time when it's apropos to do so. So we'll be looking for that opportunity. With that, I'd like to start with Marina Development and love for council members to volunteer to share their thoughts. Is there somebody who'd like to go first? Councilmember Pennington, I see you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you everyone for taking your time this evening. So relative to Marina Development, you know, I'll give you a little history. I was here when that was a sandbar, and I watched the marina be built. And it's gone through a lot of different iterations and thoughts and ideas of what it could be, should be. And nothing has ever really taken hold until the city manager came in and was able to assemble a team that he has relationships with through his previous experience. And we're able to finally move forward and bring people to the table that actually have the desire to invest in the Des Moines Marina and the public private partnerships that are coming forward. I think that at least I understand as a direction we're going seems to be a good solid vision, something that's attainable, something that is financially feasible with the relationships. I'd like to continue to see that. I'd like to continue the model of expanding our multimodal transportation system, which we've done with light rail and with the shuttle that comes down from the light rail station down and through Des Moines. And I'd like to see us, really take a serious look at the water taxi and the trip that we were able to take last summer that demonstrated the feasibility of the water taxi, and to have that come and be able to connect, the Tacoma waterfront with the Des Moines and the Seattle and the subsequent development and investment in our city and our waterfront as we move forward. The other part of the marina is in terms of emergency management, it's the captain of the port who is the Coast Guard captain in charge of the Seattle sector Seattle, said this was the only marina where you could have this type of road access to water, and encouraged us to continue to use this. And it is used currently as a staging point for about every federal agency that you want to think of during a disaster, that north end of the marina. It's obviously right now it's under repair, but a few years ago there was a huge training exercise that was down there. And so this marina offers so much stuff to the quality of life, to the future quality of life of our children, grandchildren, and it also acts as an economic stimulus for the city of Des Moines, and it's kind of the catalyst. So this is really my top priority. There's a lot of conflicting priorities that I have, but this is relative to really being able to help the city launch the rest of the way in terms of being a destination where people want to come and enjoy their time, spend their money, bring their families. I think this is a key component. So this is a high priority on my list. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. I see Councilmember Nutting next.
Thank you, Mayor. I don't have the extensive background as Vic does. I've only been in the city for 20 years, but I do know that I was part of the first council that we were close to inking an agreement for the first marina redevelopment. And this by far has been a platform that I've run on continually. And again, it's one of Echo Councilmember Pennington's is one of my biggest priorities, along with economic development, but getting the marina going as well. And that's why I put that on my priorities list, is that I don't think it's time to take our foot off the gas and put on the brakes. I think it's move forward and get her done. I think that's all I've got, short and sweet to the point.
Thank you, Councilor Nutting. I'll move on to Deputy Mayor. Michael, did you have a comment? I'm sorry.
No, Mayor, I was just wondering what was the process? Are we going to have, because we could provide some sort of an update where we are and a presentation, but so I don't know if you want to have comments before that or after or both.
If we could, let's go through the first round, and then I'd like you to take it
Sure.
up from there.
Absolutely.
and then that will spur an additional conversation on the second round, if
Great.
that's okay.
Yeah.
So next I have Deputy Mayor Buxton, and I see you, Councilmember Harris.
Thank you, Mayor. When I began to run for office here in Des Moines, my tagline or priorities were my goal was to create a safe, green destination community. And I think this action that we're doing here, developing the marina, is key in creating a destination community. I want people in our region all over the place, instead of getting up on a Saturday morning and saying, hey, let's get in the car and go to La Conner. I want people in Everett to say, hey, let's get in the car and go to Des Moines. And I think that our partners that we have chosen are absolutely fantastic. These are premier personalities and individuals and companies that have developed incredible projects on waterfront, on the Salish Sea here in the Northwest, and have been their quality developments and incredibly successful. They've been regional draws to everybody around the region. I don't think we could have picked better partners anywhere, and I am so excited to see this move forward. And what did my colleagues say? Putting the pedal to the metal here. It couldn't happen any faster for me. So thank you.
All right, thank you, Deputy Mayor Buxton. Now I'm going to move on to Councilmember Harris. I see you as well, Councilmember Steinmetz.
Thank you, Mayor. Two things. One real quick, echoing Councilmember Pennington. To my mind, if there is a regional disaster, the Des Moines Marina will play a very key role. And I have always wondered about ingress and egress, given the obvious choke points at Marine View Drive, Kent Des Moines Road, and so forth. I always wondered what the city could do in that event to make sure that first responders could actually get to the marina and vice versa. But anyway, I have a very short message for my colleagues. I strongly endorse the notion of creating a council-driven marina committee. We have one other enterprise fund, and it is stormwater management. And if you think about it, they're, kind of the same kind of deal. And in my opinion, the marina is even bigger, more complex. And having the council committee, it concentrates the mind. You have 3 members of the council who will study every decision point, and it affords the DMMA to come to the city and the entire community to take part in the process. And so you always have that extra layer. It's just, to me, it's remarkably similar to the Environment Committee and Stormwater Management. And that should be the structure. And that's it.
Thank you, Councilmember Harris. Moving on to Councilmember Steinmetz.
Yeah, I have this right near the top of my priority list as well, because again, I've only lived here about 23 years now, and every time everybody talks about developing the marina, and frankly, this has gotten much further than any other conversation about developing the marina that I can remember or have heard about before. And so I think it's really important to just try to keep it going. I'd like to stress, in the times that I've been running for council and been active, I've never run into anybody that was opposed to the redevelopment of the marina. Everybody thinks that's a necessity that we need to keep going. And I think the trick is to keep it going. It's very easy to get bogged down in process and trying to develop, people will have problems with this idea and problems with that idea, but nobody that I've ever met, at least, wants to just stop it. And so I think it's important that we keep our focus. We seem to have developed some pretty good partners to do this. And so I look forward to, actually seeing a redeveloped marina in my lifetime. Something that I think some people were not so sure about 10 years ago. So I think it's a huge priority to keep it going.
Thank you, Councilmember Steinmetz. Moving on to Councilmember Oxiger.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have to agree that, development of the marina is extremely important to the city. In fact, I think it's integral to the future of the city. But at the same time, it does affect various, other functions that we're doing. And I think Councilmember Harris's idea of having a marina committee, so that we're talking, how this is going to impact everybody. So let's have, a process for the public to be, involved in this operation. In particular, the marina is, the water side aspect of it, but it's, backs up right against the Marina District. And it's going to play, an important role in how the Marina District is developed. And we have people living here. We have businesses here. And, I think it is important that we do establish a committee or a commission to, work alongside the council to make sure that the public is heard. That's my major concern.
Thank you, Councilmember Oxiger. I agree with all of you. I think our future lives or dies with the development of the marina as a city, something I believed in. And I'll say that to the whole waterfront. I disagree about the committee. I think the need is already handled in the municipal facilities and the economic development. So it's going through two committees at this juncture. Also with the appointment of Councilmember Nutting and Councilmember Pennington as liaisons to the marina development accomplishes the mission. Some of the things that I would like to see is I would like to see some kind of timeline for both the marina development as well as the we'll say the marina development and then the public portion of the marina, the two parts of the marina and how they're going to fall out. I'd love to see the plan of where the public engagement process is going to be involved. We've already had some of this, and I want to remind people that it got delayed a couple of years by COVID and obviously some permitting and some other things where we'd be much further along had that not occurred. I'm very interested in the passenger ferry piece. I think some kind of test or something like that would be a great idea. And with that, I'm going to turn over. I know Council or City Manager Matthias has a few comments.
Thank you, Mayor. Council, I'd like to give you an update on where we are with the marina, and then we're going to have a presentation on passenger ferry service. So where we left off, I think last November, we had recommended a team to council to move forward with marina redevelopment. And council supported that recommendation. And the direction we received, the next step was to enter into an exclusive negotiating agreement with that team. That team is comprised of, Cohen McBride. Lauren Cohen is the gentleman who developed Point Ruston. And he is, that was the chosen team. He's the managing partner. After significant negotiation between our attorneys, and we have redevelopment attorneys that we've hired who are familiar with the development process and can help us. And Lauren and his attorneys, we recently came to an agreement and signed the agreement to engage in exclusive negotiating with that team. Meanwhile, last 2 weeks ago, Friday, we had Lauren and his team visit Des Moines. We took them on a tour of the city. We had our team and their team meet in the same room and talk about the process. We were fortunate that day. We'd invited the mayor, the deputy mayor, and Councilmember Nutting to City Hall to meet Lauren. Lauren walked in the door and I said, "Meet the mayor, please give him your check," which he did. So we have a $35,000 check for good faith money from the developer to proceed. And in early May, we'll be going down to Point Ruston, kind of learn how they did what they did, why they did certain things, and have our team and his team start to collaborate on the design and development of marina steps and other aspects of marina redevelopment. We're looking forward to that. We're looking forward to both coordinating that design, providing input opportunities for our public when we see more finished design, because what we have now is a lot of the conceptual design that has been done by Skylab, and Lauren and his team need to turn that into some type of preliminary design that could actually be constructed. I thought what was exciting was that the comments from Lauren's team was they were astonished by how much we knew about the city, and they deal with other municipalities. And also the fact that they really liked the work we've done with Skylab up to this point. And so we're going to retain Skylab to be sort of the owner's design representatives, that's us, and work with the developer. So these are all really exciting events in the process of moving forward. And we're pretty excited about that. But the thing that happened along the way was there more and more became an intense interest in passenger ferry service. And if you recall, last September, we had a maiden voyage with a boat that was given to us, donated to us and the crew by the Griffin brothers, who own or Griffin family that owns Pier 57 in Seattle. And they're interested in participating in marina redevelopment in Des Moines, but they provided the opportunity for us to use their boat, and that was phenomenal. And the minute we took off, Jeremy, I think, set this up, but we had orcas jumping off the side of the boat. It was phenomenal. And there's a lot of interest. Just let me frame this a little bit and Peter Phillips and Greg Dronkard, who are our consultants on this passenger ferry review. One of the things that's happening is there's a lot of interest in, as we say, multimodal transportation. Well, you could see passenger ferry service as being an extension of I-5. You just do it on the water. It's cheaper, it's more fun, and in some respects, much more efficient than getting stuck in traffic. So that happened. There also became a lot of interest in electrification of ferries, which is ultimately the direction we would like to go. And we'd like to make sure that anything we provide is sustainable. I know what Councilmember Buxton or Deputy Mayor Buxton mentioned, sustainable, green, and efficient for our community. With that, I'm going to ask Peter to give you a brief presentation, somewhat comprehensive, on the potential for ferry service. And then when he's done, and we'll take any questions that you have, we also will be advising you of an action we're going to recommend at the next council meeting. So with that, Peter, would you proceed? And Greg, as you have part of this.
You're on mute, Peter. There you go.
Thank you, Michael, and good evening, council members. As Michael said, for the past several years, the city has been exploring the possibility of the introduction of passenger-only ferry service as part of the greater marina redevelopment plan. And Michael has asked me tonight to give you some historical background on the project and a chronology from its genesis to where we are now. So next slide, please. That is downtown Seattle, and that's the view that we had on the demonstration project as we arrived downtown, and that's the destination of the proposed ferry project that we're going to be looking at for this summer. Next slide. As many of you know, there was a little bit of exploration about the possibility of ferry service in the early 2000s, but there wasn't sufficient interest at that time and the project was abandoned. But the climate today is very different. The region has seen exponential population growth, 500,000 people between 2000 and 2020. That's roughly the size of Seattle in 2000, that growth has occurred. And with that growth, we have not only seen no commensurate growth in vehicle capacity, but actually vehicle capacity in the region has declined. Road diets in the Seattle city limits have restricted movement of single passenger vehicles in the city, and the viaduct removal has halved the capacity of single occupancy vehicles. Before the viaduct's removal, the viaduct handled 140,000 vehicles per day. The replacement tunnel handles only 80,000 vehicles per day. So there's an obvious need for alternatives to single occupancy vehicles. And marine transit is, we believe, an excellent alternative. The passenger-only ferry service is fast. The boats are comfortable. They're much more environmentally friendly than they have been in the past. And they really provide a quality of life alternative to single occupancy vehicles and bus transit that makes them attractive without any of the parking demands that other modes of transportation require. And as Michael mentioned, electrification is on the horizon. There are already several European ferry services that are electrified, and there are several pilot projects developing here in Puget Sound that would introduce fully electric boats to passenger-only ferry service. Next slide, please. The current work in Des Moines, not only on the marina, but in the infrastructure surrounding it, make this an ideal time to revisit passenger-only ferry service. The improvements on 216th, 24th, and 28th, enhancing access to the airport and to the marina, are complemented by the marina redevelopment currently underway. The bulkhead replacement is going to make that a physically very attractive home port for ferry service, and the complementary marina redevelopment around the hotel, the marina steps, will make it an attractive location and destination for visitors, not only from the region, but from around the world coming in from SeaTac Airport. Next slide. So initially, we began discussions informally with some of the passenger vessel operators with whom I was familiar in my history with marine transit. And those discussions made us recognize that the most efficient way and the quickest way to get passenger ferry service implemented was through a public-private partnership. Next slide, please. Thank you, Bonnie. So we were told by the operators that they needed to see some kind of market need for ferry service. So we commissioned a demand study in the summer of 2020, and the study was completed in August, which means that all of the survey responses came during the pandemic work from home lockdown. The presentation was made to Seattle City Council in December of 2020, and the results were really supportive, strongly supportive from the community of Des Moines for passenger-only ferry service. Not only the residential community, but also from the business community. And specifically, we heard strong support from the farmers market, from the quarterdeck, Wesley, the FAA, and other Des Moines business tenants that they would like to see this service implemented. What's unique about the Des Moines passenger ferry service is that we would have demand going into Seattle and demand coming from Seattle to the airport. Most ferry service around the country is predicated on a need to get from point A to point B, and then coming back from B to A at the end of the day. They don't usually have the passengers filling the boats going up and filling the boats coming back, and we'll have demand on both legs, which makes it a much more economically viable service. And also the ferry service will provide residents in Des Moines and the South King County region access to the central waterfront, which Des Moines residents would like to see. But equally important, it will bring Seattle residents and visitors southward to Des Moines so that they can enjoy the marina, the farmers market, and the recreational opportunities of Des Moines and the surrounding region. Next slide, please, Bonnie. So the demand study showed us that there was indeed demand for this service. And that demand study, when it was published, garnered interest from several vessel operators seeking to explore operating the service. And among them was the Griffin family, as Michael mentioned. They own Pier 57 and I think about 30 restaurants around the country. They're very familiar with hospitality. They also have 2 brand new ferries that they built at All American Marine last year. And they were gracious enough to donate us one of those boats to host a demonstration ride at no cost to the city, which we executed in September of 2021. We hosted about 100 people on a beautiful September day to Seattle and back. And we offloaded people at the Pier 57 so we could demonstrate the way that passengers would offload and unload the boat as well. It was very popular with civic leadership and our elected officials. So we decided next to take the next step in determining whether or not ferry service was physically feasible, and hired Maritime Consulting Partners and Greg Dronkert, who's with me here today, to review the operational feasibility and a potential operating plan. Next slide, please. Here's a picture of the boat that was donated to us by the Griffins. It's a 250 passenger high-speed cat that does about 25 knots. It is slightly larger than the ideal boat for our service, and we are looking at a boat that's a little bit smaller than that, but generally the same look, and not the same graphics, but it's the same type of vessel. Next slide, please. That's a view of the route that we took, leaving Des Moines on that beautiful September day. Next slide, please. So Greg's team came back with a feasibility study that demonstrated that with the existing infrastructure in Des Moines, existing vessels that are available for charter, and existing facilities in Seattle, that it is feasible, operationally feasible, to run ferry service from the Des Moines Marina to the central Seattle waterfront. And so we're here today to talk about a pilot project that would run next summer from July through October, 4 round trips per day, Wednesday through Sunday, that would allow us to see what types of passengers we will be getting. We chose Wednesday and Thursday to ensure that we were capturing possible commuter passengers, as well as the visitors that would be coming on the weekends. So as I said, we've got everything that we need for this beta test. And so we're here to talk to council about proceeding with that. Next slide, please. What we seek to establish with this pilot project is to really see what kind of service the community would use. So we'll see what kind of riders that we have in terms of number, time of day. We'll learn what kind of travelers we have, whether they're commuter travelers, tourists, people coming from the airport, people going to Mariners and Sounders games, concerts, etc. We'll learn where these passengers are from and where they're going. Are they regional passengers? Are they local to Des Moines? Are they going to Seattle? Are they going to the airport? We'll actually test our operating cost model, and we'll learn the recovery of those operating costs through the fare box. We'll learn how much passengers are willing to pay and how many passengers are willing to take the service, to see whether it is economically a viable choice for the city. And it's also a way, as Michael said, to test the intermodality of passenger-only ferry service with the existing shuttles. Next slide, please. So there's a lot of future potential as well. I spoke a little bit about the electrification of passenger-only ferries. The boats that are currently under development are probably going to be able to do about 17 nautical miles between charges. And serendipitously, Des Moines is about 17 miles from Seattle, and it's about 17 miles from Tacoma. So it's an ideal test bed for other operators who are looking to test private ferries. And I think, Michael, you were going to take over from here, if I'm correct.
Yeah, thank you, Peter. So council, that's, I think that's the end of the, one last picture. As we were returning to Des Moines. Thanks, Bonnie. So council, this is kind of an exciting development. It's something we can study. I wanted to advise you that at the meeting of City Council meeting of April 14th, we will be bringing forth an item asking for council support to proceed with this beta test and then to return in the fall with the results and have another discussion with council and see, you know, where are we and what makes sense to do, and should we try to find a way to make this happen. We're not doing this on any level yet, or is it intended to coordinate with the Washington State Ferry Service? This would be a public-private partnership ultimately. And we've been very conservative in our numbers. We'll be asking for an allocation of funds, but we're not making any assumptions about fare box revenue. So whatever we request from the council, ultimately it will be less than what we've asked for, but we just don't want to guess at what that number could be. So this is really exciting. I thought all along that the development of the marina would encourage interest in passenger ferry service. I was wrong. There's already interest in passenger ferry service, and that will be a demand factor for the marina redevelopment. So this is pretty exciting stuff. Peter is an expert at this, has a great team. Greg is here. Greg, we wanted to keep this a little, maybe 10,000 foot view. I think Greg is great at being about 1 foot above the ground and digging down and understanding all the dynamics. So council, that concludes that part. I appreciate your interest and priority in marina redevelopment. We have gotten further than we've ever gotten before. We have a phenomenal team, development team, and the pieces are there in the public-private partnership on so many different levels. And as we go forward, we'll be excited to share that both with the Economic Development Committee and with the council as a whole. So Mayor, I think that concludes our report. If there are questions.
Thank you.
Yeah.
If you have specific questions for the ferry service, I realize we're going to get more information prior to next Thursday's meeting. But if you have those, I'll allow those. It won't count as your second pass on this subject. So with that, I see Councilmember Steinmetz and Councilmember Harris.
My question is for Peter. You made a comment about ferry service without the parking demand. And, you know, I can tell you, I hear a lot of great support for ferry service, but there's always that question, but where are they going to park? Can you flesh that out a little bit so we understand why you don't think that this is going to create demand for parking down at the marina, or what you meant by that statement?
Yeah, well, we don't have any additional demand requirements. The boat that we're proposing to use is a 65 passenger vessel that's going to be making four trips a day. So half of the people that are on that boat will be parking on the other side. So we'll be able to bring people from Seattle to Des Moines who will not be using the parking facilities. They'll be parking in Seattle, getting on the boat in Seattle and coming down and enjoying the marina and the businesses in Des Moines, not driving down and parking on our streets.
Council member, if I may also, there's some discussion, and it's part of the design, that the area underneath the steps could be utilized for parking spaces as well. So there's a way to kind of work to balance that. And I also think there are opportunities along 7th to maybe enhance the manner in which we provide parking up there, so we can kind of expand the inventory of parking spaces. It's a fair point. And it's something that will have to be addressed. I think that, like Peter suggests, there's some ways to deal with that.
Thank you.
All right, Councilmember Harris, you're next.
Thank you, Mayor. I don't like surprises, but I will ask you to, not now, but for next time, you mentioned having a cost model, and I would like to see what that cost model is on the 14th. And also, I was wondering if you at that time could provide some information on what, if any, environmental impacts. As just one example, colleagues, we pay every 8 years or so a pretty hefty amount of money to dredge the mouth of the harbor, and that has to do with the wave action of boats coming in and out. And so I'm just thinking about stuff that I don't know about, and you guys are the experts. So if you could have that material, thank you.
Councilmember Harris, you opened the door for me and I have to walk through. I also am not a fan of surprises. And I was surprised to learn that I'd spent $1 million on a ferry boat without council approval. Like I said, it was very difficult. Scott Wilkins helped me get the ferry into the garage. It was very hard to do. But I also don't like surprises, so I'm with you.
All right, moving on to Deputy Mayor Buxton.
I just wanted to know if any portion of this presentation tonight is going to be on the Marina portion of the website or the Marina page of the Marina website for reference.
Yeah, Councilmember, I think or Deputy Mayor, I think we'd prefer to get the sense of the council moving forward. And I think after the 14th, if that was some direction you wanted to proceed, as we're describing, we absolutely would put the information up. I don't want to raise expectations and then for some reason council feels it's not time or whatever. If
Okay,
that's
thanks.
Okay. So I think, is that it for questions? I would say,
Councilmember Pennington has a question.
oh, there, Councilmember Pennington.
Never mind. I had a statement. I'll save it for later. I didn't have a question.
Okay,
And Councilmember Oxiger.
go ahead, Councilmember Oxiger.
So, Michael, are we to understand that the presentation we just had is not going to be posted?
No, Councilmember, what I said was that we are going to be bringing an agenda item to the council on the 14th with, requests to proceed with what we're describing here. And at that point, we will put this presentation up and any additional information we have. I just don't want to get in front of the council.
Well, okay, I don't understand. Okay, the presentation we just had from Peter, and thank you, Peter, for a good presentation. That's not going to be made available prior to the 14th?
Councilmember, we'll do whatever you want. We're just trying to say, that if we don't want to raise expectations, then the council feels, well, resources are better spent elsewhere. We'll do whatever you guys want. If you want to put it up, we can put it up. There's a consensus.
To interject, I would assume that this could be included in the packet that we get tomorrow when it's posted for the next Thursday's meeting. I see City Clerk Wilkins. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, as I always do on Friday, I always upload all of the PowerPoints to the packet, all of the public comment to the packet, and repost that back on the website. So everything you see tonight will be attached to tonight's packet on the web. And then anything additional, as Michael said, moving forward, depending on the outcome, will go perhaps on a separate place on the website in their entirety. But everything that you see tonight, as well as all the previous meetings, are always attached to the packet on the website.
Thank you.
I hope that clarifies.
Was that all your questions, Councilmember Oxiger, on this subject?
At this point.
Okay, I just have a couple questions. I also believe portion of the south end of our marina has often, especially in the midweek, a lot of open spots. Has that been considered as when you guys are working through your parking solutions as a viable option?
Mayor, one thing to keep in mind as well And yes, the answer is yes, but also we currently have about 800 slips. And the marina dock replacement and potentially resizing a number of those slips and providing the dry stack storage for the smaller boats is going to lower the total number of slips. The way it's now set up is that 2 slips require a reserved parking spot. So as you reduce the number of slips, you increase the available parking. So that's another factor that will enter into this, especially in the south side.
Okay, thank you, City Manager. Is there anyone has another question on the passenger ferry piece of this before we move on to our second round of comments? Seeing none, do I have a volunteer to go first on the marina? Councilmember Nutting.
Thanks, Mayor. I just wanted to say that I my questions and everything else has been answered, so I'm good at this time. Thank you.
All right. Councilmember Harris.
Just a comment, at our ARPA spending night, we allocated, I believe it was $25,000 for to hire a firm to do an ongoing digital experience for the marina redevelopment as it proceeds. And I think now would be a fairly good time to get that going. There's enough information now to start using that to help the public understand where things are likely to be driving to. That's it.
Thank you, Councilmember Harris. Seeing nobody, Councilmember Pennington.
Yeah, just to kind of close the loop, I think what I've seen here, and I know the work of Peter Phillips and his group, and thank you very much for that. I'm looking forward to the night of the 14th. I'm looking forward to hearing more about a foot passenger ferry service. I think this is a really significant turning point, really in our history of our city and our marina. I think the last passenger ferry through here was the Mosquito fleet that used to dock at 240th and east of or west of Marine View Drive. So anyhow, I have not seen anything or heard anything that would lead me not to support this. So I'm looking forward to our meeting on the 14th.
I believe that, as I said before, the Marina Development is crucial to our city. I actually agree with Councilmember Harris in the fact that money we allocated aside is the money that can help us with the public approach and how we can get them involved and educate them and go forth with all that. It's going to be instrumental. I think the thing that is really important here from the takeaway is that we are on the path. What we have to be careful of is paralysis by analysis. And that's something that has held this city back historically in the past. We came to this point, I think it was in 2012, and hit a roadblock. The truth is it needs to be done. Now, and everybody's not going to be happy with everything in the marina, but in general, they're going to be very happy. There might be a specific here or there. I think that Michael and his staff and the consultants they're using are actually exemplifying what we need. We need them to do it. They are the experts in the business. And I think we put the people in place in the right locations to get this job done. It is one of the foundations of why I ran, was to make this development happen, instead of look back and wonder what we did 15 years ago and why we're still where we are. So I think does anybody else have any comments before I move on to actions on this? Okay, seeing none. Pretty much, I think it's answered itself. Obviously, staff's going to get back to us with some of the answers and direction and so forth, and we get to see it. not just the May 14th meeting or the April 14th meeting, but several as we move through, I'm sure, this summer as he progresses on it. Obviously, anything that needed to be vetted will be vetted to the municipal facilities and economic development committees. And from that point, I think we're done with this subject, and we're going to move on to communication. So with that, I'm going to turn over the floor to whoever council member wants to go first about what they see their vision or their strategy or their goals for communication in this city. And before I see you, Councilmember Nutting, I think it's all encompassing as communication. So whether you're talking about our website or you're talking about how we send a message or how we evaluate anything or use apps, et cetera, this is all applicable in this discussion. So please feel free to cover all the topics. With that, I turn the floor over to Councilmember Nutting.
Thank you, Mayor. I just, as you know, I bullet pointed most of my stuff, and how we go about there is not to tell staff how to do their job, just that these are my ideas, and any suggestions on how to get there is kindly appreciated. So I think for communications, some sort of town hall process and I know we were doing these before COVID by making ourselves available to condo associations, but you know, now that we're virtual, I attend some PTSA meetings and booster club meetings, and attendance is huge now that it's virtual because they can still be a part of the meeting and cook dinner and feed the kids. So I don't know, getting back to those, increased city information and city updates in the city currents was another bullet point. Community calendar on the city website, getting all of the events somehow. And I know it's just, I look at the staff and we were there where it's just one more thing. And I do understand that it all takes time. And again, I do appreciate what staff does, but a community calendar, a construction hub, you know, just an idea, updates on what's going on in the city, what people ask, and we're conduits for that, right? As council, we have constituents that come to us and we do the best we can to fill them in. But if there was a link or whatnot to what's going on, and then building and maintaining community partner relationships, and you know, we do it. I just think, you know, we need to continue to and maybe a little bit more aggressively. Our partnerships with the school districts and volunteer organizations, Seattle Southside Chamber of Commerce, surrounding cities, places of worship, we tend to overlook them. And then most importantly, our local businesses. I know we reach out from time to time, but our local businesses are what keeps us going. So Mayor, that's all I have for right now. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Councilmember Nutting. Do I volunteer to go next? All right, Councilmember Steinmetz.
Yeah, this was definitely part of my priorities list to improve communications from the city outward to the citizens. And while I think, you know, the previous topic is a really good example of how the corporate board of directors and CEO model works really well. I mean, we've set a direction on the marina, and you know, frankly, that has been followed through with in a great way. I think this is where that model breaks down a little bit, because the business model is not to be very open about things, but rather to set it all up and then to get it done. And I think that's what makes some of the members of the community feel left out or surprised, or they don't quite get the information they want. And there's a balance to be struck, frankly, you know, because this is not a business, this is a city. and a city is made up of its citizens. And frankly, there are a lot of them wanting more information. I think we can use modern technology in a way that can help that a lot through push emails where you sign up and then things are pushed out via email. Obviously, social media can be accessed quite a bit more, and we need a more dynamic website that creates an invitation for the citizens of Des Moines to go there because they know they're going to find the information that they want there. That this sort of the dynamicism of it is what they're looking for. So I think that we're certainly on the right path. Part of that balance also has to be that we have a relatively small staff. They're working very hard now, and to add to that is not reasonable given the current staffing. And so as a city council, I understand that if we want to make this a priority, then we need to dedicate the funds to doing it and doing it right. So I just think it's an important piece of what the city does, and we need to improve. And so hopefully we can, come up with a better sense of direction to the city management in order to pull that off and to make that more open. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilmember Steinmetz. I'll go next. I think one of the problems has always been, and I recognize you, Deputy Mayor Buxton, as the next after me, okay? Just so you know, is the message gets out, it gets convoluted, it has half the facts, it has misinformation, and if they can't get information, they're getting it from these sources, and it's problematic. We all know that. The website, and I agree with something Councilmember Harris had mentioned, is the app application on phones. Most people have phones. I think that's a strong area we need to go. We need the usability. The thing is that we have so many things in communication that fit in it. And I would go into communicating to businesses and developers and as well as restaurants and everything else. And I think we need to assess ourselves and we need to find priorities. As Councilmember Steinmetz mentioned, and I thought that was a really good point, is we have limited resources. So I like the idea, and one of my suggestions was always to hire some kind of consultant that can assess our communication piece. And what that could consist of to give us a fair assessment and allow us to decide what are the priorities, what we can pay for now and what we can pay for later, but show a definitive path and an effort. So I think that's kind of the way we handle communication as we move forward. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Deputy Mayor Buxton as next.
Thank you, Mayor. I think I have a few bullet points as well, and not too fleshed out, but they do revolve around reducing TDM, but creating more effective communication, both dissemination and collection, right? Responses from the community, but also information out to the community. So a couple of the things that I mentioned were explore a communications contract to provide support to the clerk, communications, and IT in the same way that we do for engineering, police, parks, etc. We have contracts with people on contract that step in and support when we have a major project. If we have major information that needs to go out, maybe we can lean on that. Explore website upgrade that is all inclusive. I don't know too much about this, but I've heard, there are tools on websites that can provide auto updates, auto polling of the community, auto emailing of subscribers and community members. Things like that could really, I think, increase our ability to collect information. I was so impressed with what the Parks Department did. It was a very 2020s process, that it was an ability to engage people that you would never hear from otherwise. And I think it would be nice to expand on that idea. And then create a schedule of in-person community outreach events for each district in the city, kind of springboarding off of what my colleague, Councilmember Nutting talked about, just reaching out to the city, and that's all I have for now. Thank you.
Okay, I have Councilmember Harris, then Councilmember Pennington.
Thank you, Mayor. Let's see here. Just wanted to, you've all received my proposal that, I've been talking about for a while. A couple of things. First of all, everything that I sent you is off the shelf. The way our website looks now is in no way indicative of that vendor or of any of the 3 or 4 vendors that provide turnkey systems for municipalities' work. We basically have to just write them a check and all kinds of very nice things happen. So there's a simplicity to it. I ask you guys to stop thinking about websites and emails. My kids are in their 30s and they have not sent me an email in many years. And this is an equity issue. Okay, email is for old people. Facebook is for old people. Okay, every human being over the age of about 9 in Des Moines, whether they are a Muslim in a full chador or somebody who lives at Judson, they have a cell phone. And our mindset should be from the ground up, every service should be on people's phones. And just in terms of the services we provide, animal control, bill pay and stuff like that. But also I go back to 2013 and the whole boil water deal. We laugh about it on my street because we got notices in the mail 3 days later. Don't drink the water, the city has an opportunity here by doing something really good, not just good enough, but to get an ability to notify all our residents, okay, when a real problem happens. We have not had the proper uptake on the code red, the alert stuff. We can provide a compelling application that makes people want to have our application on their phone, and then we can reach them when we need to, and they can reach us not just with Fix-It, but with public safety and so on. And I guess in conclusion, this is an equity issue, okay? You can pick a number, but that Facebook community group, that is not representative of Des Moines, okay? The people who vote are 59 and white, and they live on the west side of the city. It's just a fact. We all know it. We've all looked at the precincts. That phone is the key to equity in this town. And it's something people talk all the time about, how can we deal with, any number of social issues, and it's the cheapest way. And I got one other thing to say. That idea that the staff is busy is like the get out of jail free card since my time watching city council meetings. Okay, yes, we're busy, the staff is busy. I appreciate that. But there's always been this intrinsic lack of value of information. In other words, hey man, filling the potholes and the cops, they're always more important than customer service. In my opinion, customer service should be, it, all right? And that means information. That has to be something where we put our money where our mouth is. We provide the staffing so that we can reach the public, and because there is no other mechanism to make that happen, and there's not going to be. This really is just a game changer for the community if we do it right. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Harris. Councilmember Oxiger, before I turn the floor over to City Manager Matthias. Okay, I see your hand up, so I'm going to give you the floor. Oh, wait, I'm sorry. My bad. I had Councilmember Pennington first, then I'll give it to you.
Okay, thank you. And I agree, you know, the communication is important. And someone said that you want to do it right so we can do it right. I think, you know, we essentially have one person who does this, and I think she's done it right since she's taken it on. It's, you know, if we want to tell our story, which we should, because Lord knows everybody else is telling our story, and we even as over the last couple of weeks, it hasn't been an accurate story over different issues around the city. And so we need to tell our story, and we need to get that information out. But the bottom line to this is you can have every program, everything in the world you want, but right now, essentially, we have one person doing a job of trying to tell that story, and you know, you're going to have to step up and go, how important is this? Do we want to provide some additional FTEs to support this, and to what end? And you know, and there's a lot of competing priorities. Communication, telling our story, is very, very important. So if we're going to go down this path, it's going to cost us quite a bit. And so, you know, and in terms of emergencies and Councilmember Harris, you talked about the water district. I took a week's vacation and managed that incident for them. And the reason that you got your stuff 3 days late is because when we reached out at that time it was a different city manager, to ask for assistance, we were told we don't want to deliver bad news. So, but that's different than today, because I know the relationships today. I know the relationships through the emergency management process. We have an emergency management operations center, which we co-staff with the fire district. We have means of communication for emergency. Everyday kind of things that happen across the city. I will support that staff looks at these options and makes a decision. I don't want to get into the weeds. I believe that we need to figure out what pieces of communication are top priorities, and go from there. It's going to take a little bit of a ramp up to do this. I mean, but again, we're going to need more staff, and that's what it boils down to. You can have everything in the world, but it's only as good as the content that gets put in there. And quite frankly, I know our staff works late into the night at times, trying to facilitate those communications. So, you know, we can't hang it on them in terms of any type of poor communication, because I think they're doing a darn good job at getting the word out as best they can. But in terms of support, and I think fundamentally I hear it here with the council members that we support enhancing the communication, and I would look forward to a recommendation as to how that gets done and the costs associated with that. But don't hang the bad sign on our staff. It's not their fault. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilmember Pennington. Councilmember Oxiger.
Okay. I guess I'm a little confused. I didn't hear anybody hang it on the staff, I think, but I do think this, of course, is coming from a communications professor and, you know, a journalist, is that communication is essential for the operation of the city, for democracy itself. And we just are not sharing enough information. And we need to come up with a solution. One of the things in the past was there was a community newspaper. You had, you know, a place where there was a source of information. We don't have that. We have to have a repository somewhere so that people can, you know, gain the facts so that they can, intelligently, discuss and decide which way we're moving forward. And that's not just a duty of the council. The public has a right to weigh in on these things. And as far as I'm concerned, the communication issue in this town is priority one. If we are able to share the all of the information and get people, involved in the process, we will move forward together. I can give you an example that happened a few years ago. The school district, for example, went out with a bond issue. They didn't bother to go through a citizens advisory committee, and the thing failed, quite substantially. They came back, realized their error, and said, oh no, we have to have a citizens advisory committee, people sitting there and being involved in the process. They passed the bond issue right, the next time. Again, I think this is our number one priority, is communicating. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Roxier. By the way, this was the consensus of everybody, was the number one priority. We just moved the marina in front of it in respect to our consultants. I'm going to give the floor to City Manager Matthias before we go through our next round.
Thank you, Mayor. So anticipating this would be an issue that council wants to address, I just put together a brief slide. Bonnie, if you could put that up. Here's what we recommend you do. That the city put out a request for qualifications for a communications consultant. And upon selection, the consultant then interviews each city council member individually for approximately an hour. The consultant then compiles the results of the interviews. The results are shared with council, who then construct a scope of work, and the city will then contract with the consultant to undertake the scope of work with timelines and deliverables. And why we think this is essential is we would like a clear message of your expectations of what you believe the city should do. And the other part of it is that even listening right now, and this is not a critique, it's just simply the case, it's hard to sort out precisely what it is as a consensus you all want to see happen. I get you want change, I get you want more effective communication. We do too. That's one of our goals. I would just add that, Bonnie is not the only person providing information. We have a public information officer based on different events that occur with our police department. We coordinate with other agencies depending on the issue. Nicole and her staff put out information on what's going on with parks. That can happen. Andrew could release something based on based on some of the slides we've had. So there's different pieces to all of it. But essentially, we'd like to get it right, just like you guys would. So this is what we recommend. And I think it'll be very interesting when the consultant shares the results with council. You all see what each of you have prioritized, and then how do you construct a scope that we can put into place to move forward. So anyways, that's just a recommendation. Administration, you guys can take it or leave it or whatever you want to do with it. Thank you, Mayor.
In this particular one, this will be your second pass. So I see Councilmember Harris and Deputy Mayor Buxton in the order. So I'll go with Councilmember Harris first.
My suggestion would be to have the major vendors make presentations to the council and provide materials on their offerings, including costs, before we go through the city manager's process, which looks fine. But I would imagine that many of us you know, when you go into the store and if you don't know what the options are, you don't know what to ask for. So all of the major players would be happy to send us brochures and give us an idea of, you know, the possibilities. And then you can sit down with a consultant and go, oh, okay, you know, I know what's reasonable to ask about. That's my suggestion. Who's with me?
Is that all your comments, Councilmember Harris? Okay, moving on to Deputy Mayor Buxton.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to clarify in regard to information sharing and dissemination that it would be great to have a process that reduces tedium. You know, we talked about increase in staff to increase communication. Along with that, it would be nice to find a process or some kind of technology that reduces the tedium in communication sharing. I think that hearing this from the city manager, haven't had a lot of time to think about it, but that's an excellent solution. I feel like presentation. A professional, if you find a professional, they'll be familiar with not only with the resources to fill the needs and desires. So if they sit with us and hear, well, what is it that you want? Already, these people are professionals that understand the market nationally. Even they are going to be familiar with processes, up-to-date technologies, resources that will be needed for implementation for what it is that we desire. I'm sure they're going to be asking, what's the end product? What do you want to see? And so that's why, you know, maybe to think about it a little more, but that's why I think it would not be good to spend a lot of time listening to vendors if we don't have a scope of work, because our scope of work is going to tell us which vendors to listen to. If that's where we get to, where now we know exactly which vendors we would want to hear from. I think a scope of work is necessary before vendor presentation. So great solution, city manager. I really like that idea. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Buxton. And I saw Councilmember Steinmetz's hand up, so I'll go with him next for his second pass.
Yeah, I'm also completely unclear what Councilmember Harris was referring to in vendors. We have vendors of websites, and that's kind of what I
Councilmember Harris,
understood
please mute yourself.
that you were referring to.
No,
Based upon the prior conversations that we've had.
Councilmember Harris, please.
Councilmember Harris, come on. Come
So,
on, we've had many
No.
conversations about this, so I'm assuming you're talking about website vendors at this point. You know, and if that's not true, you'll
Excuse me,
certainly have the
Councilmember
opportunity-
Steinmetz, I'm going to give you your full time. Councilmember Harris, please mute yourself. Everybody gets their chance to speak.
You used to be able to have a crosstalk.
Sir, you're causing a disruption to this meeting. I do not want to remove you from the meeting. Please mute yourself.
Yeah.
Please mute yourself, sir. Be respectful to the other council members. We heard what you had to say. It's time we get a chance to hear Mr. Steinmetz talk as well. Thank you. I do not see a mute on your screen. Go ahead, Councilmember Steinmetz. My apologies.
Thank you. You know, and I'm not trying to pick fights here. I'm just trying to say, you know, solutions that are being thrown out there aren't necessarily clear as to what those solutions are or what they're designed to address. And I think that we need to go through the process of figuring out what it is that we want. There are all kinds of different communication solutions that I've experienced from other governments that I find very helpful, and some that I find kind of don't. And as a consequence, I think that collection that's being proposed right now by the city manager tends to make some sense. But the point is that, you know, we do need to steal ruthlessly from other cities, other counties, what has worked for them, and take a look at that in order to come up with our own plan. And I don't believe that there is any one vendor or 4 vendors that duplicate that for everything else that's out there. So it seems to be putting the cart before the horse. Before we know what we want, why are we talking to people that are going to deliver something that we may or may not want? So, you know, I endorse the plan as proposed right now. I think that's a good way to move forward. I do think that there is a clear consensus on the council that we all want to see improved communication. And I think that's really what we need to keep focused on, is how do we get this better? And not get focused on other things and not be distracted from that. Thank you. That's it.
Thank you, Councilmember Steinmetz. I move on to Councilmember Oxiger for his second pass.
Well, I guess the Councilmember Harris was making a distinction between the, you know, the process that the city manager has proposed and his proposal. And I'd like to hear, you know, the distinction that he's making. And, you know, it's, if we're just going to go in, you know, lockstep order and not be able to have a true discussion amongst us, then there's a problem. So, you know, if I could yield my time now, I would like to have Councilmember Harris have the opportunity to explain what the distinction was between the, as he sees it, between the city manager's proposal versus what he was proposing.
Councilmember Oxiger, that is not the process today. He had the opportunity to distinguish it. I don't think he clearly communicated it. I will give you your comments and then I will move to the next council member.
Okay, then the point is that Councilmember Steinmetz even said he didn't understand what Councilmember Harris was saying. So, you know, this is communications, folk. You know, let's talk about what, you know, let's come to some kind of consensus. The process we've had so far with regard to even this you know, discussion we're having today. Thank you to Deputy Mayor Buxton and to Councilmember Harris. They shared with me what their list of priorities were, so that we could have some idea what people were direction they were coming from, and be able to ask questions of them to really understand what each of us are talking about. But this idea of we just throw up, you know, our position and then not be able to, you know, have a discussion of it is not productive. I yield.
Thank you, Councilmember Oxiger. Okay, I'm going to let Councilmember Pennington go next.
Okay, so what I think I hear, or I believe I hear from Councilmember Harris, is that there are options, different companies can provide different options on styles and types of communication. And that, you know, and that's beneficial in one respect, but we need to understand what we want to communicate, what are our priorities and what we're looking for. So it's kind of chicken or the egg. It's kind of like, you know, I'm going to have these companies build me an airplane. Tell me what you can build. Well, but if I don't know what I want, it's kind of mute. But I think there's a little bit of validity on that. But I think it's probably important for us to have an idea of what we want in terms of a website. So, and then we can ask folks, what can you provide us? Here's our things. So, and then to the city managers in response, I'm aware that there are other folks that provide communications. There just seems to be one individual that gets the brunt of all of the dislikes or you know, complaints. And so like I say, I'm well aware there's more than one. Anyhow, I would like to see us move forward. I'd like to see us look at what our communication priorities are. I'd like to look at and then you know, put out a request for proposal and see what we get in terms of companies that can help us. So anyway, that's it.
Thank you. I as in hearing you, I'm reminded of a rule. If there are 3 council members that want to allow Councilmember Harris to speak one more time, raise your right hand and I will allow him to speak one more time to clarify his position. I see 3. Therefore, Councilmember Harris, I yield you the floor for one more time.
What a guy. So, anybody who has made a large purchase, okay, it is standard practice, complex projects, to have the vendors be talking to you to educate you. Think of them like lobbyists that we talk to. They are constantly telling you the latest of technology and prices. And in anything like my field of IT, you're all of a sudden made aware of things you didn't even know existed. And so their job is to educate you and to give you a rough idea of what's possible in terms of costs. And then you can sit down with a consultant and have something much more productive. Okay, or just have them send you their brochures. Just say, here, I'd like to see your printed pieces. It's real simple. And then basically you're an educated consumer. And if you don't do that, then you show up and the consultant, it's like going to Home Depot and they show you the drills that they have on offer. Not necessarily the best drill for you, but the drills that they would like to sell you. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Harris. Deputy Mayor Buxton, I'm going to say a few words, and you would need 3 people to support you on this on a third time. I just want to clarify that. This is where we're trying to do somebody else's job in a regard, in my opinion. I think that while we have some people with some great knowledge and background in communication, nobody's the expert of experts here. I think there's better people out there. I think there is a need to have a consultant to assess our needs. And Michael, I would even add the fact that not only interview us, but to assess our communication in the city as well. Then we're going to know what we need and what type of products we might want to entertain and what those costs are. So you got to get the shopping list first, and you got to get it from somebody who knows. And I'd like that to be the first step, as the city manager suggested. How we use Channel 21, how we do some other things, how we can do a state of the city more effectively, and so many other things. All are part of this. How we can communicate through the various social media entities, no matter what age or demographic or what you're trying to reach out to. I think it's a good, solid first step. It gets us in the door. It allows us to find what our priorities are, what the costs are. Then we go to the next step. In consensus, I just think you have it backwards, in my opinion. I think you're trying to shop before you've had even an assessment of what you need. You haven't gone through the cupboards to find out what you need. And that's what we need to do here. So with that being said, I'm going to, I've had all of you guys, Councilmember Oxiger, have I had you speak twice?
Pardon?
Have you spoken twice?
I don't remember, but
I don't think
what I want to do is I want to support Council Member Buxton's.
For her third pass.
For her third pass, I think. Okay, let me just say this: we've all identified how important this is. Okay, we're now having the first exchange of information, really, because nobody saw everybody else's priorities except you. I assume you, Mr. Mayor, but. Okay, let's talk about this and not try and constrain this so that we don't have proper information or substantial information. And if you're doing counts on first and second passes right now, I see the merit to Councilmember Harris's position. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you. Thank you. Before I turn it over to Deputy Mayor Buxton, just want you to understand my intent here. It's to get everybody a shot to be clear and concise in a couple of 5-minute windows. But we have a lot of things to cover tonight in a 4-hour window. So it's an effort to move the meeting along as effectively as we can. So it's on us to effectively communicate our first pass as well. So with that, I'm going to turn it over. Do we have 3 people that allow? Got it. Okay, go ahead, Deputy Mayor Buxton. Thank you.
Question, if we put out an RFQ, will this consultant also be a vendor or connected to specific vendors? Or will they be an unbiased, unconnected? Will it be an unbiased, unconnected assessment?
I'm sorry, was that?
Yeah, I think one of the things that Councilmember Harris was concerned about is vendors. If we put out an RFQ for this assessment, asking us questions, will the consultant be either a vendor as well or connected to a specific vendor? In other words, are they only going to be offering us one product after their assessment, or will they be unconnected with the vendors and they won't have an investment in a certain sale? Do you see what I'm asking?
Councilmember, yeah, but I mean, absolutely. We hire lots of consultants. And
well, I'm just trying to make that clear because that is something that Councilmember Harris put forward. And so I'm offering you the opportunity of clarity.
I am trying to get there. Okay, so it would be folly, as far as I'm concerned, to hire a consultant who only has one, who's representing a vendor. That doesn't even seem ethical to me. So it would obviously be an independent consultant. And I think that the reason this kind of came to me as a concept to do was because it's possible everyone agrees our communication could be better. But I would submit that almost all of you have different views of what that would entail. And I think for me, we need a consultant to kind of compile what those perspectives are. And then for council to walk through them and say, this matters, this matters, this matters. And then from there, if it makes sense to go find a vendor to address that, then it's tailored to our needs. Because the last thing we want to do, per your question, is hire a consultant who recommends a vendor just because there's a relationship and they're not addressing what we need. I don't think that's the approach we want to take. Does that answer your question?
Absolutely. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Pennington, I might as well allow you. Do I have 3 hands for the third pass? Okay, go ahead.
Okay, and this isn't a statement directly on this topic, but there's been a couple of times where council members have said we've shared our communications with other ones, but others didn't share back. I got those requests. I got a couple of them. The reason I didn't share is because, you know, you council members starting to share all this communication, then pretty soon you have more than 3 that's on this string, and you end up with a violation of the Open Public Meetings Act. And so I'm not gonna, that's why I didn't share mine with anybody except the city clerk. And if we wanted to go through her to let staff disseminate that, that'd be one thing, but directly, because I don't know, I'm not going to be a part of that potential violation of that act. That's it.
All right. Councilmember Nutting, did you have anything else to say?
I'm good, thank you.
Okay, so do we need to take a vote as to move forward on the consultant as proposed by the city manager? I'm looking to you, City Attorney George. Is that what we would do at this action?
You can. I mean, it sounds like there's support for it. Yeah.
Okay, there's consensus. Do I have a motion to direct the city manager to look at hiring a consultant to evaluate the communication in the city. All those in favor, please raise their right hand. I see Councilmember Steinmetz. I
Did
see
you-
Deputy Mayor Buxton.
Did you make
Hang
the
on.
motion, Mayor? Sorry.
Oh,
Yeah, I
I'm
think
sorry.
You need a second.
I'm sorry. Yes, you're right. Let's make a motion. Do I have a motion for that? Or a
So
second
moved.
to my motion? Let's put it that way.
So moved.
Okay, Deputy Mayor Buxton has seconded my motion. With that, I'll take a vote. All those in favor, please raise your right hand. I see Councilmember Steinmetz. I see Deputy Mayor Buxton. I see Councilmember Pennington. I see Councilmember Nutting. All those opposed, and myself, and all those opposed. I see Councilmember Oxiger and Councilmember Harris. Motion passes 5-2. All right, thank you. Moving on to the next topic is public safety. And do I have a volunteer to start the conversation? Councilmember Nutting.
Did we want to go through the first round here and then possibly take a break, or do we want to take a break now, or
Let's
what were your thoughts?
yeah, let's try to tackle this issue first, and then we'll take a break. Thank you. Okay. Turning the floor to you, Councilmember Nutting.
Okay, thank you. Mine was pretty short and to the point. Again, it was just bullet points. Just fully fund our officers, whatever they need. The chief, whatever his asks are. Secondly, I'd like to expand code enforcement with the amount of the boom, I guess, to get houses on the market and out of compliance work that's being done. Just expand our code enforcement and the constant review of ordinances. I was reminding, just a quick little story, reminding Yvonne, my wife, what could possibly be if we weren't reviewing ordinances. We drove through a very small town this last week, and in a very seemingly not so good part of the town was an amusement park that rose up in the middle of residential neighborhoods. And obviously, if we don't review our ordinances, that could possibly be something that could happen here. So anyways, that's what I have. Thank you.
All right, Deputy Mayor Buxton, you're next.
Thank you, Mayor. Again, bullet points, short. Some of these are ideas I have not vetted out, so I'm totally open to responses like "That's impossible, Deputy Mayor." So, or "That's a good idea." You can tell me that too. But okay, number one was to explore opportunities for more officer positions that are both sustainable and competitive. We have authorized officers through our ARPA funding, but we need to prepare for when that is no longer available. Explore or design a commercial block watch program, kind of like block watch on steroids, for businesses, especially along Pack Highway, though I see there's a lot of positive movement in gathering those together already. I'm pretty impressed. Create a viable list of legislative asks that the council can get behind in writing and or with testimony, like in November, to prepare for the legislative session ahead of time to get behind our law enforcement. And then the last one, this is a random idea, but to explore contracting DMPD to Kent, where the Kent footprint is surrounded by Des Moines. For example, contract DMPD to respond to all real estate west of Pack Highway center line and north of Kent Des Moines Road. Just an idea. I have no idea if that's feasible or not. Those were my bullets. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Buxton. Moving on to Councilmember Steinmetz.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think this is probably another concept that there's broad agreement on. The question is how to go about it. I think there are some metrics that we can take a look at, particularly concerning the police department, that we can use as sort of a target goal that we're going for. As I understand it, the statewide average is about 1.5 officers per 10,000 residents. And we're now at about 1.3, if I remember correctly. And I think we should strive to get to that statewide average at minimum. And, certainly then, if that's the goal that we're proposing, then we have the administration and Chief Thomas to come back to us with the financial picture of how to get there. And, see if we can actually pull that off and what kind of time frame that we're looking at and how does that measure up against expected growth. Because I think people really do, they want to be in a place that's safe. They want to be in a place where they feel they can get good, responsive times from the police when they need the police. But they also don't want to feel that they're being suffocated by too many police officers everywhere and have to always look over their shoulder to make sure they're not, jaywalking or stepping off a curb and all of a sudden something's going to happen. I don't think that our police officers do that. But there are people in the community that are concerned about over policing as well, and we've got to find that right balance. I think that what Deputy Mayor Buxton just said about trying to resolve our problems on the highway, on Pack Highway, and sort of clearing that up with Kent. I don't know that there is a prescriptive solution that we can offer at this point. Again, I think that it's incumbent upon the city manager and the chief, if we decide that that's really something we want to clean up, that we want as a city to take responsibility for policing Pack Highway, then they need to tell us the best way to go about that and figure out how to go about that. I think that let's see, and we need to make sure that we have the capacity to respond to problems when they occur, but also more importantly, that we have the sense of community that avoids a lot of those problems in the first place. There's been a lot of good work done up in the Pack Ridge area. And I know that's been a pretty rough area in the past, and I think it's improved tremendously. And so I think that a lot of community building effort needs to go into that. I remember, 4 years ago, we heard somebody who worked in Parks and Recreation pointing out that one of the best ways to decrease juvenile crime is to have activities available for juveniles after school. Keep the kids busy and they're not going to get into trouble. Give them an alternative, something to do. This will feed into, I'm sure we're going to discuss Parks and Recreation later, but I think that's an important piece to keep in mind because there is an overlap with public safety there. So I would look forward to hearing the plans. I think these are all things that are very important to the people in the community, and we need to make sure that this remains a pretty high priority. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Steinmetz. Seeing no hands, I'll go next. I'm sorry, Councilmember Harris, did you want to go? Okay, I'll go and then I'll let you. Let me write you down. All right, so a couple of the things that I think has been tremendously successful right now, especially with the Pack Highway, is Chief Thomas's work to lead the charge on cross-jurisdictional cooperation. Personally, I think we can expand that to the north and the south. Partner with him in a conversation I had with Councilmember Oxiger not long ago. We talked about the cars and the mufflers and a lot of the problems down in Redondo coming from Federal Way. And could we work with them and partner in some policing models that could maybe stifle that problem? So I see some great opportunity there because I'm seeing initial great success in what Chief Thomas is leading there. So I'd love to see more of that. The legislation and pushing onto our legislative agenda, I can't tell you, I was a little bit disappointed to see that that our legislators at the state level, even though it was on our legislative agenda and it was on skateboards and a few others, was the muffler modification piece. And I would have loved to seen that addressed. It was, in my book, fairly easy because Idaho had done it successfully and so had other states. So it was pretty much adopting what they'd done. So I'd like ways that we could push on that. I think you answered a question, the concerns I had on animal control, and I look forward to the solutions there. And the other question, a little bit that Deputy Mayor Buxton kind of tipped off is what is the right level of officers? Do we need a few more? And I understand under current policy and court systems that we might not necessarily be able to wrest ourselves out of the problem, but do more police deter crime and protect our citizens here, and that being evaluated. And I think that needs to be looked at, particularly for the 2023 budget, while we look at 2022. With that, I'll turn the floor over to Harris, Councilmember Harris.
Thank you, Mayor. Let's see here, going down the list. Yeah, Reach Out Des Moines has been tremendously successful. It's inexpensive, it's a county grant, and the only problem with it is that their mission statement limits them to a very narrow geographic range. We should find a way to expand the program to every school radius. It's just the cheapest crime prevention you could imagine. That's why I've tried to push for every time the city has an opportunity to fund low-income internet, we should do it because you do want to keep people occupied. I am a big fan of the RPZs, the parking permits. I use them all the time in Seattle. It's basically free money and easy to implement. And we have many residents who will happily pay for an on-street permit. I am a big fan of having going back to an ACO. Acknowledging that, it wasn't exactly always a bed of roses with Officer Magnuson, but the concept is solid. I think we should, the thing with the digital presence, not website, all of the vendors now have public safety apps. Basically, you see something fishy or whatever, it's like Instagram. You hit a button, takes a picture, you type in what about this, and bam, it goes to the police department. No email, no phone calls. It's just a way to make, basically everybody will want that app. Let's see here. I think the city should take a serious look at annexation of all the bits west of Pack Highway. It may be a Hail Mary, but we should look at it during this short window before the Link Light Rail opens. I know there is a lot of disgruntlement, if that's the word, amongst even the commercial property owners along that stretch. It has not been discussed in a long time, and it's just worth thinking about. I would not be a big fan of trying to do some kind of, we police that area. I'm having a tough time imagining the police being super jazzed about that idea. But if we controlled it, that would be another story. And finally, back in the day, we had a lid lift, which was dedicated to public safety, and the voters did not say no, they said hell no to it in 2012. But I'm about 99% sure that it would be well received at this point if the public understood that it could be dedicated to public safety. And that's it.
All right, Councilmember Pennington.
All right, thank you. I think, there's a lot of passion around public safety, I'll share my thoughts. The accreditation process that the police department went through, I think chief and city manager, I'd love to maintain that. I think that really gives us the guideposts for the best practices, and it addresses a lot of what you all have brought up this evening, and what we should do and shouldn't do, and how our police department should work in some of those areas. So I think to maintain that accreditation and to be committed to that is really, really important. I agree, the legislation piece, we need to be supporting our police officers and work in unison with the guilds and their lobbyists, and there's some things that still need to be changed. And I understand the reasons behind the reform, but I can tell you from firsthand knowledge that some of those reforms and even some of the changes they did still restrict the ability to deliver service, and not only just the police, but on the fire side and some other areas. So that's important to monitor that. I think that the mental health component is very important. There are so many folks out there that could, if they will accept the help, will really benefit from that. And I think just at a human level to not acknowledge that or turn your back on that or shun that is not acceptable. And so I've spent a lifetime working in the emergency medicine field, and mental health has always been a big thing. And so we need to support that. I heard a couple of you comment about Pacific Highway South and the area up there. And again, I know that area. I can go down from Kent Des Moines Road all the way down to 272nd and tell you what business is in Des Moines and what's in Kent. And the history behind that is years ago when Kent was marching west, they went up there and they took the businesses, they took pieces of land that had businesses on it. And then as Des Moines began to expand south, they incorporated everything. And I will remind you that the city boundaries go up to the fog line. So the highway is the city of Kent, except where it's completely in Des Moines. But here's the concern. There's been a conversation about land swaps in the past. And the last time the conversation was with Kent, they offered us the piece of property that's behind what was the old QFC up there now. And all of that is wetlands and non-buildable and is no value. The other thing that a lot of times electeds forget is the land up there. It's serviced by, obviously by the city of Des Moines, serviced by the fire district, which is a separate junior taxing district. It's serviced by the parks district. It's serviced by the library district, the school district. And so if you give away those parcels, you're financially impacting those different agencies, because and as with the fire district, their revenues are derived from assessed values. So when you start giving away pieces of land and businesses, it affects other agencies. And so we need to be very conscientious about that. And in terms of just covering calls for Kent, and Chief, you can jump in here because you know it better than I, but different cities have different ordinances. So sometimes it would be a little bit difficult, I think, for our folks to police the city of Kent and vice versa. So while that's a great idea, and up in that area, I know our officers, like in the fire service, we work with our neighbors, and it works really well. We all are all through the same dispatch center. We all can talk to each other, even though you're on different talk groups. So I don't know, other than a convenience for folks that maybe have businesses up there, that in terms of the world of emergency response, I don't believe that there's a great benefit in a land swap. And So that part I wouldn't support for a lot of several reasons that I've mentioned. Anyway, that's it. Thanks.
Councilmember Oxiger, before we go to staff and then our second wave of comments, would you like the opportunity to speak?
Sure.
Okay.
I just want to emphasize that we spend 50% of our budget on policing, and we're placing a tremendous burden on our police department. And there are so many things that are coming up that they're by nature a reactive force. And I think we need to, as a council, look at proactive actions we can take, and it doesn't necessarily have to reflect directly with police services. Councilman Steinmetz brought up and so did Councilmember Harris about there are programs that we can use to engage kids and reduce juvenile crime. There's various things that we can do to be proactive on this and give the police a break. I mean, we're expecting them to do everything. And so, but by virtue of that, it means that we have to think outside the box and, look at things that are more proactive. And that's, where I hope we will, direct our attention. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm going to turn the floor over to either the chief or city manager if they'd like to make comments before we go through the next round.
Chief, I'll start. You can back clean up. We're really fortunate to have an incredible police chief. And one thing about our chief is that he's very closely associated with WASPIC. He knows the other players in law enforcement. He's been able to build coalitions. It was very interesting that when all the violence was erupting on Pack Highway and the chief came up with a plan to address that, other cities were speaking about the issue, and the chief was doing things to the degree that other mayors requested our plan, because our plan was about action and operations. So it's a very delicate balance for the police to function effectively. And it's easy to say, let's do that because it will result in this. The change takes time. And I think that one of the things that I've always stated, and I adhere to, is that we do not mess with police operations. City doesn't, the administration doesn't do it. Encourage the council not to try and do it. The chief will tell us the resources he needs. And I think, Chief, we have a very good relationship with the guild and with the officers up there and with the chief and the command staff and everyone, because in every way possible, we have tried to support the request from the police department. And that will continue to be the case. Highest priority, how do we address public safety? Because nothing else happens without it. So it's critical. And, George, our former police chief, he and I had a saying, which that you can't have development without public safety, and you can't have public safety without development. So they have to go hand in hand. And so I just, appreciate the concerns from the council. I honestly don't know how many specific remedies that you suggest will be implemented or requested for, but it's going to be the chief asking us for his prioritization of needs and resources, and of us as an administration and as council as it done in the past, and I believe will continue to do, finding ways to get him those resources. So that, Chief, do you want to add to that?
I'll just briefly say, I feel very lucky as a chief for the support that our department gets from the city manager and city council. We do have some challenges. We have some tough things ahead of us, but we've got a great police force. We've got great officers, great staff, and we are, I can tell you, we're committed to doing everything we possibly can to keep this community safe. And that means working with others. And the mayor and deputy mayor attended a meeting yesterday evening. I was there. Representatives from the Kent Police Department were there. We're addressing the needs of businesses in our community, not at the expense of residents and other areas of our community. We're out there and we are pushing as hard as we can, and you have our full commitment that we will do everything we can, not only to keep our community safe, but do the best we can to maintain and improve the quality of life. So part of that is getting direction from the council and the city, and the other part is us just going as hard as we can to be successful in what we're trying to accomplish.
And Chief, I just want to add to that for the council. The first night that Ken was our police chief, they were shorthanded. I believe it was in Redondo. And he, in uniform, went down to support the troops in the middle of the night. And boy, did that send a message.
Thank you, City Manager Matthias. Would anybody like to comment on public safety? A second round before we take a break? I'll go with Councilmember Harris. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Two things real quick. Going back to the annexation thing, I mean, even if it's a 1 in 1,000 chance, it should be researched because it's crime prevention. We've all watched that area in fits and starts deteriorate over the past 25 years or so. And if that could be achieved, that would give us a swing at the bat at controlling our destiny. And and the other thing is, I'm struck by with new construction that we really talk a lot about SEPTED and making sure that the designs of the buildings discourage criminality and encourage good things to happen. I wonder if there aren't things that we could do in our code or some programs for existing property owners to make their properties safer, to require, to just basically require fewer calls. And surely there's got to be some way, you don't want to impinge on their rights, but there's got to be something to make the people feel safer in these existing apartments, condos, so forth. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Harris. Is there anyone else that wishes to comment? Oh, I'm sorry, Deputy Mayor Buxton, I did see your hand. My apologies.
Thank you, Mayor. So I wanted to respond to a couple of things. Thank you for the additional education and the understanding. That was helpful to me after a couple of my bullet points. I wanted to respond to Councilmember Harris's recommendation about Reach Out Des Moines. I am incredibly impressed by that program. And so if there were ever an opportunity to somehow support that further and enable that more networking, I don't really know how it works or exactly how it's funded, but I'm just so impressed. And then another ad in regard to SEPTED, I understand that when Tanya goes out and supports block watches, there's a lot of education that goes with that. She really encourages residents in neighborhoods and giving them recommendations about how to improve safety through SEPTED principles when she does block watch education. So that's all I have. Thank you, Mayor.
Mayor, if I may.
You may.
And Council, the Deputy Mayor brings up a great point, just so that everyone is perfectly clear about this. Every time there's a pre-app, or review of a new development permit or building or development or whatever it is, SEPTED is a part of that discussion relative to requirements of design and how we can address the maximum visibility and safety for any business that decides to build or develop in Des Moines, and housing. Thank you.
Yeah, I will add, it's multifaceted what we can do for public safety, right down to neighbors watching out for each other, neighborhood watches, and expanding that is a great avenue. I know Tanya's made some headway there and there's work to be done, but I'm looking forward to getting every neighborhood organized in that regard. I will say that I've been to 3 different crime related business meetings, particularly on the Pack Highway, some for Des Moines businesses, some for Kent, and some for both. And I've been optimistic in what I see. They want to find a solution. They want to make sure they do the preventive measures and the lighting. They're networking with each other. They're organizing with each other. And I see good things coming from that in the future. I know one thing that the chief was strong on is encouraging them to continue to get together and work together and organize and get some selected representatives and work with the cities as necessary. So I see that optimistic. I think, Chief, you are doing a great job with what you have. And the other one, like as we talked about the legislation piece, I mean, we want to help juveniles, and I get that parks and recreation, the other services, schools, all of that contribute to helping us there. But it is also a known fact that we definitely need to address some of the legislation for youth. Right now, in a sad way, some of it's almost given a license to commit crime, and that has to change as well. And that is through that legislation we talk about as legislative agenda. Is there anybody else that has anything to say on this particular item? I don't necessarily see any action. I think we're just giving staff, they've got our feedback and what our interests are and what we'd like to see. And obviously, I think the chief and city manager would take that forward and integrate it in anything they provide for us this year.
Yeah, and Mayor, this will also come back to council in specific concrete terms relative to budget recommendations in the fall.
All right, thank you. With that, council, I think this meeting is probably most likely at least to go to 9 o'clock today. And we've still got about 9 more items and we've completed 3. While these are some of the bigger items, I'd like to take a break for 5 minutes. It's 7:21 now. We will return at 7:26.